If you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have respected you, if you've ever dreamed of serving justice to someone who wronged you, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for one of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll hear today. What happens next will show you that sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about anger. It's about careful, methodical planning and the satisfaction of watching someone's world crumble when they realize they've made the biggest mistake of their life. The champagne glass in Trent's hand caught the light from the crystal chandelier as he stood up at my dining table. And I knew, the way you know a storm is coming when the air goes still, that something bad was about to happen. A toast, my son-in-law announced, his voice carrying that particular blend of charm and arrogance he'd perfected over 8 years of marriage to my daughter. The 14 guests around my table turned to him, faces bright with holiday cheer and expensive wine. I'd spent over $1,000 on this Christmas Eve dinner, prime rib, imported champagne, hand-carved decorations that took me 3 days to arrange throughout my house at 1847 Cedar Ridge Drive. Trent's smile widened, the kind of smile a shark might, where if sharks bothered with social niceties. I want to thank my father-in-law, Harold Lombard, for hosting us in this beautiful home. He gestured around my living room with exaggerated appreciation. Several guests nodded approvingly, though I should clarify something for those who don't know the full story. My hand tightened around my own glass. Across the table, my daughter Heather studied her plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. My father-in-law here is what you might call a broke old man who doesn't deserve this holiday celebration. Trent's voice dripped with mock sympathy. Good thing we're gracious enough to let him stay in what's practically our house at this point. The laughter started immediately, loud, raucous, the kind that fills a room and pushes out everything else. I watched their faces. Trent's sales manager buddy from the Toyota dealership, his poker night friends, Heather's country club acquaintances, they were eating it up. One woman actually wiped tears from her eyes. "Trent," I said quietly, but my voice disappeared under the noise. "Honestly, Harold," Trent continued, riding the wave of approval, "you should be thanking us for putting up with you. What would you do without us? Sit in that garage of yours playing with old car parts." More laughter. Someone clinked their glass in agreement. I looked at Heather, really looked at her. My daughter, the girl who used to climb into my lap at the auto shop, smelling of motor oil and asking 1,000 questions about how engines worked. The woman who now wore a $300 necklace I didn't remember buying her and couldn't meet my eyes. She didn't say a word, just took a long sip of wine and stared somewhere over my left shoulder. That's when something inside me went very, very cold. Not angry cold, calculating cold. The kind of cold that comes from 45 years of running a business, of learning that some people will smile while they rob you blind. I'd built Lombard Auto from a single garage into 5 locations across Texas. Sold it in 2021 for $1.8 million. Not bad for a kid who started out changing oil in his father's driveway. I thought the money would secure my daughter's future. Thought I'd leave her comfortable, cared for. Instead, I'd apparently become the entertainment. You know what the best part is? Trent was on a roll now, working the crowd. Harold here thinks he's being generous, letting us live here like he's doing us some big favor. That's enough. I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor, cutting through the laughter like a blade. The room went quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Uncomfortable quiet. Trent's smile flickered but held. "Oh, come on, Harold. Can't take a joke?" I could feel everyone watching me, the weight of their judgment, their pity, their amusement. I was 67 years old. I'd built a business, raised a family, buried a marriage, a lifetime of careful planning. And this is what I got. Mockery in my own home from a man who'd never built anything in his life, except an impressive collection of excuses. "Excuse me," I said, setting down my glass with careful precision. "I need some air." I walked through my kitchen, past the catering dishes I'd ordered special from that place on South Congress, past the custom cake that cost $180. I could hear Trent behind me, voice lower now, probably explaining to his audience that the old man was sensitive, that I couldn't handle the truth. The garage door closed behind me with a solid click. My sanctuary, The place where I'd spent the last 3 years restoring a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air to cherry condition. The car sat there, partially assembled, chrome gleaming under the fluorescent lights, patient, waiting. I leaned against my workbench, hands flat on the cold metal surface. The sound of laughter drifted through the walls, muffled now, distant. You work your whole life to build something. You sacrifice. You plan. You think you're securing a future for the people you love. And then one day you realize they're not planning for a future with you. They're planning for a future after you. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, $847,000 in liquid assets, $400,000 in home equity, investment accounts, bonds, the kind of portfolio that takes decades to build and a single generation to destroy. Trent thought I was broke, thought I was pathetic, thought this was his house. I looked at my Chevrolet, half restored, half broken, kind of like me, I suppose. The difference was I knew how to fix cars, knew exactly which parts to replace, which systems needed overhaul, which components were beyond saving. People weren't so different from engines, really. Apply the right pressure in the right places, and you could make anything run, or stop running entirely. The laughter continued inside. I stayed in the garage, thinking, planning. 45 years of business strategy doesn't disappear just because you retire. You don't forget how to read people, how to anticipate moves, how to protect what's yours. By the time I walked back into that house, I knew exactly what I was going to do, and Trent Stewart had no idea what was coming. I stood in the garage for another 10 minutes, letting the cold December air clear my head. The muffled party sounds continued inside. My own home turned into a venue for my humiliation. My mind moved backward, searching for when everything shifted. 3 years ago, Heather and Trent had shown up at my door with practice smiles. "Dad, we need to talk about your living situation," she'd said. "This big house, all alone. What if something happens?" I made coffee, listened as Trent explained how they'd move in. "Keep you company. Just temporarily," Heather assured me, "until you're back on your feet." That was the first mistake, not recognizing a con wrapped in family concern. 6 months later came the second mistake. Heather asked to use my credit card for groceries. Just easier than juggling multiple cards. I'd handed it over, trusted her. I walked to my filing cabinet, pulled out the folder I'd been reviewing. $8,200 in 3 months. High-end restaurants, online purchases, a fishing trip to Cabo. I definitely didn't take. The statements told a different story than the one Heather had been telling me. I thought about Trent 8 years ago. Charming, maybe too smooth, but Heather had been happy. I'd watched him propose in my auto shop. Said he wanted to honor my life's work. I'd been touched. The wedding cost me $35,000. I'd pay gladly. When had the charm curdled into contempt. 18 months ago, I'd mentioned selling the house, moving to a smaller place downtown. Trent's fork had frozen. Heather went pale. They'd exchanged a panicked look before. Trent recovered with that smile. "Don't be crazy, Harold. This house is perfect. Besides, where we go, we've built our life here. Their life and my house on my dime." After that, I'd noticed things. The way Trent called it, our house. How he'd taken over the master closet, pushing my clothes to the guest room. How they made decisions, repainting, replacing furniture without asking, like they already owned it. The garage door opened. Heather stood there, backlit by kitchen light, looking uncertain. "Dad, are you okay?" I studied her face, searched for the little girl who'd handed me wrenches, who believed I could fix anything. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just needed a moment." "Trent didn't mean," she started. "Yes, he did. No anger, just fact. He meant every word." Her hands twisted together. For a second, I thought she might say something real. Instead, "You're being too sensitive. It was just a joke. I'll be in soon. Go enjoy your party." She hesitated, then left. I looked around my garage at 50 years of accumulated tools. At the Chevrolet I'd spent 3 years restoring. At concrete stained with decades of work. A man spends his life building. Sometimes he has to tear down what's broken before he can build again. I walked to my tool chest, opened the bottom drawer. Under shop rags was a manila folder, trust documents, $1 million for Heather and Trent, everything I'd worked for. I pulled it out, held it. Then I walked back into the dining room, where 14 people were finishing dessert. Trent saw me first. His smile was triumphant. He thought he'd won. I set the folder on the table. "Trent," I said, voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "You're absolutely right." His smile widened. "I'm a broke old man." I opened the folder, pulled out the trust documents. "Especially now." I held up the papers. Official seals, signatures, dated November 24th, 2024. "This is a trust deed for $1 million setup to transfer to you and Heather upon my death. Your..." Trent recovered with that smile. "Don't be crazy, Harold. This house is perfect. Besides, where we go, we've built our life here. Their life in my house on my dime." After that, I'd noticed things. The way Trent called it our house. How he'd taken over the master closet, pushing my clothes to the guest room. How they made decisions, repainting, replacing furniture without asking, like they already owned it. The garage door opened. Heather stood there, backlit by kitchen light, looking uncertain. "Dad, are you okay?" I studied her face, searched for the little girl who'd handed me wrenches, who believed I could fix anything. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just needed a moment." "Trent didn't mean," she started. "Yes, he did. No anger, just fact. He meant every word." Her hands twisted together. For a second, I thought she might say something real. Instead, "You're being too sensitive. It was just a joke. I'll be in soon. Go enjoy your party." She hesitated, then left. I looked around my garage at 50 years of accumulated tools. At the Chevrolet I'd spent 3 years restoring. At concrete stained with decades of work. A man spends his life building. Sometimes he has to tear down what's broken before he can build again. I walked to my tool chest, opened the bottom drawer. Under shop rags was a manila folder, trust documents, $1 million for Heather and Trent, everything I'd worked for. I pulled it out, held it. Then I walked back into the dining room, where 14 people were finishing dessert. Trent saw me first. His smile was triumphant. He thought he'd won. I set the folder on the table. "Trent," I said, voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "You're absolutely right." His smile widened. "I'm a broke old man." I opened the folder, pulled out the trust documents. "Especially now." I held up the papers. Official seals, signatures, dated November 24th, 2024. "This is a trust deed for $1 million setup to transfer to you and Heather upon my death. Your inheritance." Trent's face cycled through confusion, recognition, horror. I repeated past tense. Then I tore the documents in half. The sound cut through the silence. I tore them again. Again. Let the pieces fall like snow. "You're right about one thing, Trent. I am broke now because this will never see the inside of a bank again." Someone gasped. I watched Trent's face drain of color, watched his mouth work soundlessly, watched my daughter's expression crumble. "Merry Christmas," I said. Then I walked out through my kitchen, back to my garage. This time I locked the door. I sat in my half-restored Chevrolet, hands on the disconnected steering wheel. Through the walls, I heard chaos, raised voices, Trent shouting, chairs scraping, the front door slamming as guests fled. I sat in quiet darkness and felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Free. They thought I was weak, stupid, ready to be managed until I died, and left them everything. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I pulled out my phone, found Robert Clark, the estate attorney. We had an appointment January 2nd. I moved it to December 27th. Then I called Lucas Turner, a private investigator I'd used for business background checks. Thorough, discreet, expensive. "Lucas, Harold Lombard. I need you to look into my son-in-law, Trent Stewart. Everything, finances, employment, digital footprint. I need to know exactly who I'm dealing with. His fee, $3,500 for a comprehensive report within 2 weeks. Cheap at twice the price." I sat listening to my house settle into silence. The party was over. Trent and Heather were probably in their room, arguing or panicking. I didn't care which. Tomorrow was Christmas. The air would be toxic with unspoken accusations. Trent would try to fix this, to charm his way back. I let him think he might succeed, right up until the moment I destroyed him. The Chevrolet sat patient around me. I ran my hand over the dashboard, feeling where vinyl had cracked. "You and me both," I murmured. Time for a complete restoration. But first, careful disassembly was required. You couldn't rebuild properly until you'd taken it apart, identified every damaged component, every weakness, every flaw. I knew how to take things apart, and I was about to teach Trent Stewart exactly how thoroughly a careful man could dismantle a life built on lies. The shop light hummed. My tools waited on their pegboard, each in its proper place. Time to get to work. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of silence that follows an earthquake. I made coffee in my kitchen, listening to whispered arguments upstairs. Heather's voice high and panicked, Trent's low and angry. I took my coffee to the garage. Let them stew. The Chevrolet looked different this morning. Or maybe I was seeing it differently. Underneath the primer, this car had been a rusted wreck. Now it was halfway to beautiful. Patience. That's what restoration required. Strip everything down. Fix what's broken. Replace what's beyond saving. Footsteps on the stairs. Multiple sets. The garage door opened. Trent looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. Heather hovered behind him, red-eyed. My daughter had been crying. Some part of me wanted to comfort her. The newer, colder part noticed she'd positioned herself behind her husband, still choosing him. "Harold." Trent's voice was careful, the salesman salvaging a bad deal. "Can we talk?" "We're talking now. About last night, I was drunk. The guys were egging me on. I didn't mean any of it." I sipped coffee, watched him, said nothing. The silence made him nervous. "Come on, Harold. It was a joke. You know I respect you, don't we, Heather?" My daughter nodded. "Dad, please. Can we just forget the whole thing? Start fresh." I looked at her. When has she learned to lie so smoothly? "The trust documents are already filed," Trent said. "You can't just." "Those were copies for your records. The originals are with my attorney." I called him this morning and instructed him to void the entire arrangement. A lie. Robert Clark's office was closed until the 27th. But Trent didn't know that. "You can't do that. Actually, in Texas, I can do whatever I want with my estate." Heather's eyes widened. She'd probably thought of my assets as already half theirs. "We're family," she said. "Family forgives each other." "You're right. Families should also respect each other, support each other, be honest." I looked directly at her. "When's the last time you were honest with me?" She flinched. "The credit card you've been using for groceries." Funny thing about statements, they're detailed. Restaurant bills, online shopping, a weekend trip to Cabo in October. Trent went still. "I don't remember authorizing a vacation or those $800 at the poker tables in Louisiana." The garage was silent except for the heater hum. "I notice everything," I said quietly. "I always have. I just chose not to see it." "There's a difference," Heather cried. Real tears. "Maybe. We'll pay you back," Trent said, jaw tight. "Every penny. Of course. I'm sure you have plenty of savings." His face told me everything about their saving situation. "I have an appointment with my attorney on the 27th. Until then, I think we all need space." I walked past him into my house. Behind me, Heather sobbed. The garage door slammed. I went to my study and opened my laptop. Time to really look at the numbers. 3 hours later, I had a comprehensive list. The total, $8,200 in 3 months. Going back further, the pattern emerged. They'd been careful at first, small charges, but they'd gotten bolder. The Cabo trip alone was $2,400. 4 nights at a resort, fishing excursions, spa treatments, all on my card while they lived rent-free in my house. This wasn't feelings or misunderstandings. This was theft. Calculated, sustained theft. My phone buzzed. "Heather, please, Dad, can we talk?" I deleted it. "Trent, you're making a huge mistake." I blocked his number. 2 days until Robert Clark. 2 days to gather everything I needed. I opened a new browser tab. Private Investigators, Austin, Texas, Financial Fraud. Lucas Turner, former Austin PD, Financial Crime Specialist. I'd used him twice before. Business partner embezzlement, supplier verification. Thorough, professional, accurate. I dialed Turner Investigations. Lucas, it's Harold Lombard. I need a complete financial workup on someone. Domestic situation. My son-in-law. A pause. Timeline. 2 weeks. Money's no object. Comprehensive report runs through Med 500. Credit checks, public records, employment verification. Perfect. When can you start? I had all of Trent's information. Heather had used him as a reference on insurance paperwork last year. I'll email everything within the hour. One thing, absolute discretion. He can't know he's being investigated. That's standard, Mr. Lombard. Preliminary findings in a week. Full report in 2. We finalized the details. I hung up and compiled Trent's information. Social security number from the insurance form. Date of birth from the wedding invitation. Current employment at the Toyota dealership. I hit send and sat back. The pieces were moving. The machinery engaged. In business, the best revenge wasn't impulsive. It was methodical. Identify the problem. Gather data. Develop strategy. Execute with precision. Trent thought he was dealing with a broken old man. He had no idea he'd just walked into a trap that had been 45 years in the making. December 27th arrived cold and clear. I drove downtown to Robert Clark's office, 15th floor of a glass tower on Congress Avenue, the kind of place that charged $450 an hour and earned every penny. Robert appeared in the conference room. Early 50s, silver hair, sharp-eyed. Harold, quite the Christmas you had. We sat. He opened portfolio. First question, are you serious about disinheriting your daughter? Completely. Even if she divorces Trent. I considered, can the documents be structured with conditions? Absolutely. She receives nothing while married to Trent, but becomes eligible if she divorces him and meets certain criteria. What kind of criteria? Employment, financial responsibility, time-based vesting, whatever you want. That felt right. A path back if she chose it. And the house. You own it outright. You can do whatever you want. Can I evict them? Robert's expression grew cautious. They've established residency. You need proper procedures. Serve notice. File with the court. 30 to 60 days minimum. End of January at earliest. Fine. I could wait. The credit card charges, I said. Unauthorized use for personal expenses. Tell me about the arrangement. I explained verbal permission for household expenses, charges that spiraled into luxuries. Did you give explicit permission for these purchases? No, I said household expenses. Do you have that in writing? Verbal family arrangement. Robert nodded. That makes civil fraud challenging, but not impossible. The question is whether you pursue it legally or use it as leverage. Leverage for what? A settlement. They agree to move out quietly, sign away estate claims, repay charges. You agree not to pursue criminal charges. Could I actually press criminal charges? Possibly. Credit card fraud is a crime, but with family and verbal permission, it gets murky. He leaned forward. However, the threat is often more useful than the reality. People will do a lot to avoid fraud on their record. I absorb this. Not just protection, leverage, control. I want to restructure my estate. New trust, new beneficiaries, and I want the house protected. I recommend a living trust. You maintain control. Avoids probate. Harder to contest. Perfect. How soon? Documents drafted by January 10th. Meet with a notary. 2 weeks total. Do it. We spent an hour on details. When we finished, Robert looked at me with respect. Most people can't bring themselves to cut off their kids. You seem very calm. This isn't about anger. It's about reality. My daughter made choices. Chose a manipulative husband over her father. Chose lies over honesty. Those choices have consequences. What if she changes? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. Until then, I protect what I built. I left, driving through afternoon traffic. My phone rang as I reached home. Unknown number. Mr. Lombard. Lucas Turner. Preliminary findings. Are you somewhere private? I stayed in the truck. Go ahead. Your son-in-law has $27,000 in credit card debt across 4 cards. Car loan on a 2023 Lexus. Balance $55,000. Combined monthly debt service around $1,200. Trent's salary was maybe $75,000. After taxes and debt, they had to be running negative every month. He'd missed 2 payments in November. Current now, but barely. They'd probably used my car to catch up. Employment shows 6 years at the dealership. Average performance. No promotions beyond cost of living raises. Anything else? He's been searching property listings, $500,000 to $600,000 range. Started in October. Expensive neighborhoods. My neighborhood. They're planning to buy or planning to inherit and trade up. After hanging up, I sat staring at my house. Every brick paid for with decades of hard work, and they'd mentally converted it into their nest egg. I thought about Trent's face when I tore those documents. The horror, yes, but underneath rage. The rage of someone counting on money they thought was already theirs. That's when I understood. They weren't just waiting for me to die naturally. They were actively planning for it, budgeting around it, building a life that only worked if I wasn't in it. I worked until midnight. Texas eviction procedures, living trust structures, property law, civil fraud statutes. Trent and Heather thought they were waiting me out. They didn't understand that I wasn't ing. Me out. They didn't understand that I wasn't angry anymore. I was strategic, and that was infinitely more dangerous. Around 1 a.m., I looked through my window at the garage. My Chevrolet waited, patient as always. That car had taught me something. Restoration wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about stripping away everything that didn't belong, getting to the core, building it back right. Sometimes you had to cut out rust, even when the rust looked like family. By the time Lucas delivered his full report, I'd know how deep the damage went. By the time Robert finished the trust, I'd have legal protection. And by the time I was done, Trent and Heather would understand what it meant to underestimate a man who'd built an empire from nothing. They wanted my money. They could try. But first, they'd have to go through me. And I've been fighting sharks for 45 years. This time, I knew exactly which teeth to pull. January 15th came with Lucas Turner's full report. I met him at a coffee shop on Lamar Boulevard, away from prying eyes. He slid a manila envelope across the table. "It's all there," he said. "And Harold, it's worse than the preliminary findings suggested." I opened in my truck. 43 pages of documented evidence. Bank statements, text message transcripts recovered from phone records, email exchanges. The pattern was clear as glass. Trent hadn't just been careless with my money. He'd been systematic, calculated. The $43,000 was just what I'd caught. Lucas had found another $18,500 in cash advances and wire transfers I hadn't noticed. Total unauthorized use over 2 years, $61,500. But the text messages, those were what made my blood run cold. October 12th to someone named Kyle. "Old man, can't last much longer. House alone is worth $500,000 plus whatever cash he's sitting on." November 3rd. Talk to a realtor. "If we list at $520K, we'll clear $480K after fees. Enough to get us out of this hole." December 8th, 2 weeks before Christmas. He's me out. They didn't understand that I wasn't angry anymore. I was strategic, and that was infinitely more dangerous. Around 1 a.m., I looked through my window at the garage. My Chevrolet waited, patient as always. That car had taught me something. Restoration wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about stripping away everything that didn't belong, getting to the core, building it back right. Sometimes you had to cut out rust, even when the rust looked like family. By the time Lucas delivered his full report, I'd know how deep the damage went. By the time Robert finished the trust, I'd have legal protection. And by the time I was done, Trent and Heather would understand what it meant to underestimate a man who'd built an empire from nothing. They wanted my money. They could try. But first, they'd have to go through me. And I've been fighting sharks for 45 years. This time, I knew exactly which teeth to pull. January 15th came with Lucas Turner's full report. I met him at a coffee shop on Lamar Boulevard, away from prying eyes. He slid a manila envelope across the table. "It's all there," he said. "And Harold, it's worse than the preliminary findings suggested." I opened in my truck. 43 pages of documented evidence. Bank statements, text message transcripts recovered from phone records, email exchanges. The pattern was clear as glass. Trent hadn't just been careless with my money. He'd been systematic, calculated. The $43,000 was just what I'd caught. Lucas had found another $18,500 in cash advances and wire transfers I hadn't noticed. Total unauthorized use over 2 years, $61,500. But the text messages, those were what made my blood run cold. October 12th to someone named Kyle. Old man, can't last much longer. House alone is worth $500,000 plus whatever cash he's sitting on. November 3rd. Talk to a realtor. If we list at $520K, we'll clear $480K after fees. Enough to get us out of this hole. December 8th, 2 weeks before Christmas, he's getting suspicious about the card. Money to speed things up. Kyle's response. What are you saying, Trent? Nothing. Just saying. Nature takes its course. Sometimes it needs a little help. I read those words 3 times. Each time they got colder. My son-in-law wasn't just waiting for my death. He was considering accelerating it. I drove to Robert Clark's office without calling ahead. His secretary tried to stop me, but one look at my face, and she waved me through. Harold. Robert looked up from his desk. What's wrong? I dropped the report in front of him. Read page 32. He did. His expression went from curious to concerned to professionally furious in 30 seconds. This is a threat, I finished. Vague enough to be deniable, specific enough to be real. Robert sat back. We need to move quickly. If he's this desperate, he might do something stupid. I'm already moving. I pulled out my phone, showed him the notes I'd made at 1 a.m., living trust. Irrevocable. Everything goes to a charitable fund. I want it done this week. That's aggressive. So is planning your father-in-law's death. We spent the next 3 hours mapping it out. Robert called in Cynthia Harris, a notary he worked with. Late 50s, sharp eyes, the kind of woman who'd seen every estate planning trick in the book. Mr. Lombard wants to establish a living trust, Robert explained. Complete transfer of assets, irrevocable structure, charitable beneficiary. Cynthia nodded. Smart. Texas law is favorable for this, but you understand what irrevocable means. Once it's done, you can't change your mind. I understand perfectly. She pulled out forms. Let's inventory the assets. I laid it out. Sale of Lombard Auto in 2021. $1.8 million after taxes and reinvestment. $520,000 in liquid assets and bonds. The house at 1847 Cedar Ridge Drive. Current appraisal. $480,000 owned outright. Investment accounts. $220,000 minus living expenses over 3 years, approximately. $120,000 spent. Total estate value, $1.1 million. And you want all of this to go to a charitable trust? Cynthia asked. The Lombard Automotive Education Fund. Scholarship for young mechanics, $25,000 per recipient annually, enough for trade school, tools, and first-year expenses. I saw Robert doing the math. At 5% return, the trust could fund 15 scholarships a year in perpetuity. That's beautiful, Cynthia said softly. What about your daughter? She made her choice when she married a man who thinks my death is a financial opportunity. Cynthia didn't flinch, just nodded and started drafting. The legal fees came to $4,800, worth every penny. We finished on January 22nd. I signed the final documents in Cynthia's office on Guadalupe Street, her notary seal making it official. Everything I'd built over 45 years. Everything I'd saved and protected. Now locked into a structure Trent couldn't touch, couldn't contest, couldn't manipulate. There's one more thing, Robert said. The unauthorized credit card use. Lucas's report gives us everything we need for a civil suit. File it. Harold, this will destroy whatever relationship you have left with your daughter. Robert, my daughter's husband, is discussing whether to help nature along with my death. That relationship is already destroyed. I'm just making it official. He nodded. I'll have the complaint filed by end of week. Trent Stewart, defendant. Amount, $43,000 in unauthorized charges, plus interest, plus attorney fees. Will serve in mid-February. I drove home as the sun set over Austin. The house was dark when I arrived. Trent and Heather were out, probably spending money they didn't have at some restaurant I'd eventually pay for. I went to the garage. My Chevrolet was nearly complete now. The body was painted, the chrome polished, the interior restored. Just needed the engine work finished. I ran my hand over the hood. Smooth. Perfect. Ready. Back inside, I pulled out a small digital recorder I'd bought at Best Buy for $89. Voice activated. 12 hours of storage. I placed it in the kitchen, tucked behind the cookie jar Heather never touched. Then another one in the living room behind a picture frame. Insurance. Evidence. Protection. I wasn't just playing defense anymore. I was gathering ammunition for every battle ahead. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The trap was set. The pieces were moving. All I had to do now was wait for them to spring it. Trent thought he was waiting me out. Thought time was on his side. He had no idea that every day he waited, I was building walls he couldn't climb, digging moats he couldn't cross, preparing a battlefield where he'd already lost. The trust was ironclad. The evidence was documented. The lawsuit was ready, and I was just getting started. The process server found Trent at the Toyota dealership on February 12th. I was parked across the street watching. I'd driven to South I-35 specifically for this. Call it petty. I called it the best entertainment I'd had in months. The server walked through the showroom, young guy, clipboard, official looking. He approached Trent, who was with a couple examining a Camry. I watched Trent's face when the server interrupted. Annoyance first, then confusion as he got the envelope, then absolute shock as he read. Even from across the street, I could see the color drain. His mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish pulled from water. His hands started to shake. The couple looked uncomfortable. The server pointed to the document. Trent's head snapped up, eyes scanning the showroom like he was looking for escape. I smiled. This was better than Netflix. Trent's sales manager appeared. Trent tried to wave him off, but the manager insisted on seeing the papers. Manager's expression went from concerned to shocked to professionally distant. Trent was escorted to an office. The couple left without buying. I started my truck and drove home humming. The call came 2 hours later. Heather crying. Dad, what did you do? Trent's been served. $43,000. This is crazy. Is it? My credit card statements say otherwise. Those were household expenses. You gave permission for groceries and utilities, not cable, not poker in Louisiana. Silence. Then, we'll pay you back. That's what the lawsuit is for. This will ruin us. Can't we work this out? When was the last time Trent treated me like family? Before or after he told his friend my death needed to speed up? Longer silence. What are you talking about? Ask your husband about his text messages. Ask him what he meant by helping nature along. I hung up. They arrived 30 minutes later. Trent's face was red, jaw tight. Heather looked destroyed. I opened the door. Get inside. They followed me to the living room. I gestured to the couch. They sat. I remained standing. Trent tried to speak. Harold, this is... Shut up. His mouth snapped closed. I talk. You listen. I pulled out a folder. Copies of everything. Credit card statements. Lucas's report. The text messages. I laid them on the coffee table, watching Trent's face cycle through denial, recognition, panic. $43,000. That's what I initially caught. The real number, $61,500. It wasn't theft, Trent said, voice strangled. You gave us access for household expenses, not funding your lifestyle while you wait for me to die so you can sell my house. Heather gasped. Dad, we weren't. I picked up the text printout. Read aloud. Every word. Kyle's question. Trent's response about helping nature along. I watched my daughter's face. Watched realization creep in. Her eyes went to Trent, searching for denial. He couldn't meet her gaze. Here's what happens, I continued. The lawsuit proceeds unless you agree to payment. $43,000 plus $6,000 legal fees. $49,200 total. In writing, notarized. We can't afford that, Trent said, voice small. Then you shouldn't have stolen it. I pulled out another document. As of today, zero access to my accounts. Everything locked. Trent's hand trembled, reaching for the papers again. You can't do this, he said without conviction. I already have. I looked at Heather. I've restructured my estate. No inheritance. Everything goes to charity when I die. Heather's face crumpled. Daddy, please don't. You stood by while he mocked me. You knew about the charges. You chose him. My voice stayed level. These are consequences. Trent stood suddenly, knocking papers to the floor. This is revenge. You're a bitter old man. Sit down. He sat. You're right. This is revenge. But it's calculated. It's documented. It's legal. And it's just beginning. I walked to the door, opened it. 48 hours. Sign the payment agreement or we go to court. Either way, you pay every penny. Now, get out. They left. Heather sobbing, Trent's face grayish pale. I closed the door and stood listening to their car drive away. Then I went to the garage, sat in my Chevrolet, and laughed. Not cruel, just satisfied. The look on Trent's face when he'd read those texts, the way his hands shook, the way Heather's eyes widened, realizing what her husband had been planning. Justice wasn't abstract. It was Trent Stewart's face draining of color as he understood the broke old man had outmaneuvered him. I texted Robert. He's served. Now we wait. His response, let me know if they agree. If not, we file for court. I looked around my garage and my tools and my Chevrolet at the life I'd built. They thought I was broke, weak, their ticket to easy money. Now they knew different. And this was just the first strike. I still had the eviction notice prepared. Still had moves they couldn't see coming. Trent had wanted to know how long the old man would last. Turned out a lot longer than him. I whistled as I went inside to make dinner. For the first time in months, I had an appetite. Revenge tasted pretty sweet. March 1st arrived with clear skies and cold determination. I'd scheduled the eviction notice delivery for exactly 9 a.m. I watched from my study window as the process server approached. Same young guy who'd served Trent before. He was getting good at this. Trent opened the door in his work clothes, coffee in hand. I saw his face change as he recognized the server, saw the mug nearly slip as he took the envelope. He stormed back inside, calling for Heather. I gave them 30 minutes before I walked downstairs. Found them at the kitchen table. The eviction notice spread between them like a death sentence. 30 days, Trent said when he saw me, his voice shaking. You're giving us 30 days to leave. That's what the notice says. This is our home. Heather's eyes were red. Dad, you can't throw us out. This is my home. You've been living here rent-free for 3 years. Under Texas law, I can terminate that arrangement with proper notice. We'll fight this, Trent said, standing. You can't evict family without cause. Actually, I can. Check section 24.02 of the Texas Property Code. But if you want cause, we can discuss the $61,000 in theft. Trent's jaw worked. We'll get a lawyer. Go ahead. This should only cost you about $1,200. Money well spent, I'm sure. I walked out before they could respond. That afternoon, Trent hired Douglas Miller, cheap lawyer who advertised on bus benches. Cost up to $200. Robert called me 3 days later, laughing. Miller filed a motion to dismiss. Claims they've established tenancy rights. Nonsense. They never paid rent, never had a lease. Judge Thompson will throw it out. Hearing March 15th. The Ides of March. Appropriate. The 2 weeks before the hearing were tense. Trent and Heather barely spoke to me. I spent the time finishing my Chevrolet. The engine was finally complete. Every cylinder firing perfectly. I took it for test drives, letting Trent and Heather hear that engine roar. The hearing took place. Downtown. Small claims court. Nothing dramatic, just legal efficiency. Judge Thompson, 60s, no nonsense, reading glasses on a chain. He looked over the motions for 3 minutes. Mr. Miller, your clients claim tenancy rights. Yes, Your Honor. They've lived at the property continuously for 3 years. Did they pay rent? Well, no, but did they have a written lease agreement? No, Your Honor, but did they contribute to property taxes, insurance, or maintenance? Miller hesitated. Not formally, but then they're not tenants. They're guests who've overstayed their welcome. Mr. Clark. Robert stood. Your Honor, the property owner provided gracious accommodations under the understanding it was temporary. That arrangement is now terminated. Motion to dismiss denied. Eviction notice stands. Defendants have until April 1st to vacate. 45 minutes total, including waiting. I looked at Trent as we left. His face had that grayish color again. You did this on purpose, Trent said. You planned all of it. Of course I did. You think I built 5 auto shops by being stupid? You're destroying us. No, Trent. I'm just stopping you from destroying me. Heather grabbed my arm. Daddy, please. Where are we supposed to go? I looked at my daughter. She was 35 years old, 7 years not working, living in my house while her husband planned my death. That's not my problem anymore, Heather. You made your choices. Live with them. The next 2 weeks were strange. They moved through the house like ghosts, packing boxes. I helped with nothing. On March 30th, Trent rented a moving truck. The apartment they'd found was off Runberg Lane, North Austin. Rent $1,650 a month. Security deposit and first month, $3,300 upfront. They'd borrowed from Heather's inheritance, about $5,000 she'd been saving. April 1st, moving day. I sat in my garage working on the Chevrolet while they loaded. Heard Trent swearing, furniture scraping, Heather crying. Around 3 p.m., Trent appeared in the garage doorway. We're done. Keys. He threw them. I caught them without looking up. You're proud of yourself, he said, watching us suffer. I set down my wrench, looked at him. I'm not proud. I am satisfied. You call me a broke old man who didn't deserve respect. You spent $61,000 of my money. You discussed helping nature along with my death. And you thought I'd just take it. I stood up. I'm not suffering watching you leave, Trent. I am relieved. Like finally cutting out a cancer. He looked like he wanted to hit me, but he just turned and walked away. 5 minutes later, I heard the truck start. Drive away. I walked to my house. Empty rooms. Quiet. Clean. Mine again. I poured myself a bourbon and called Robert. They're out. Good. How do you feel? Like I just took out 40 years of trash. He laughed. One more thing. You asked me to mention the lawsuit details to Tom Richards. You sure? Tom Richards, owner of the Toyota dealership, also Robert's client. I'm sure. Purely factual conversation, of course. Of course. I'll schedule a meeting next week. I hung up and smiled. The eviction was just move 2. Move 3 was already in motion. May came with thunderstorms and consequences. I was in my garage polishing the Chevrolet's chrome trim when Robert called. It's done. Trent out at the dealership. I set down my polishing cloth. Ow! Had a meeting with Tom yesterday about his estate updates. Mentioned purely in passing that I was handling an interesting case. Financial fraud between family members. The son-in-law who'd stolen $61,000 from his father-in-law using credit cards. Tom asked if this was public record. I said it would be soon. Court filings are public. And Tom's a smart guy. He put 2 and 2 together. Called his HR this morning. They found cause. Operational restructuring. Trent was let go at 10 a.m. I should have felt triumph. Instead, I just felt tired. This was necessary, but it wasn't pleasant. How much severance? 2 weeks standard. 2 weeks pay for Trent. Maybe $2,500 after taxes. And now no job. I hung up and went back to my car, but the satisfaction wasn't there anymore. Just cold necessity. The call came 3 hours later. Heather, hysterical. What did you do? Trent lost his job. They said operational restructuring, but he knows it was you. How are we supposed to pay the settlement now? How are we supposed to live? Heather, no. You've taken everything. The house, his job, our future. When does it stop? When the debt is paid. $49,200. That was the agreement. We can't pay that without his job. Then he should have thought of that before stealing from me. She was sobbing now. We have nothing. Nothing. We're trying to pay you $850 a month, but we've already missed payments. And Robert will file for wage garnishment. If Trent finds new employment, 25% of his wages will go directly to satisfying the judgment. You're destroying us. No, I'm collecting a debt. There's a difference. She hung up. I stood there holding the phone, feeling something crack inside my chest. Not guilt, not regret, just the weight of what I'd set in motion. But I didn't stop. 2 weeks later, Heather found work as a cashier at an H-E-B grocery store. Starting wage, $14.50 an hour, 32 hours a week. They wouldn't give her full time. Wouldn't have to provide benefits that way. Her take-home, roughly $1,600 a month. Their apartment rent, $1,650. The math didn't work. I knew it didn't work. That was the point. In June, they missed their third payment on the settlement agreement. Robert filed a motion for accelerated payment terms. That's when Trent tried to fight back. He hired Miller again, another $800 he didn't have, and filed a countersuit. Claimed I'd defamed him to his employer, causing wrongful termination. Claimed emotional distress. Asked for $75,000 in damages. Robert called me laughing so hard he could barely speak. He's suing you for defamation. I never mentioned his name to Tom Richards. Not once. I described a case. Tom made his own conclusions. Emotional distress. He threatened your life in writing. What do we do? File a motion to dismiss? This is frivolous. It'll cost Trent another $1,000 in court fees when it fails. And Miller's probably charging him by the hour now. The motion hearing happened in July. Different judge this time. Judge Martinez, younger, sharp. She read Miller's filing. Read Robert's response. Looked at Trent with something like pity. Mr. Stewart, do you have any evidence that Mr. Clark mentioned your name specifically to Mr. Richards? Well, no, but the timing. Circumstantial. Do you have evidence that Mr. Lombard instructed Mr. Clark to defame you? It's obvious that. Evidence, Mr. Stewart, not speculation. Trent had nothing. Miller fumbled through his notes, found nothing. Motion to dismiss. Granted. Mr. Stewart, I'm awarding legal costs to the defendant. You owe Mr. Lombard an additional $2,400 in attorney fees. File frivolous suits again, and I'll consider sanctions. Trent turned red, then white, then red again. Stood up so fast his chair fell over. This is rigged. You're all protecting him because he has money and connections. We have nothing, and you're bleeding us dry. Mr. Stewart, sit down, or I'll hold you in contempt. He didn't sit. My father-in-law is a vindictive old bastard. It took 2 bailiffs to escort Trent from the courtroom. I watched him go, watched Miller hurrying after him, probably already calculating how to bill for this disaster. Robert touched my arm. You okay? Yeah, just tired. He's desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. I know. We walked out of the courthouse into July heat. I drove home thinking about Trent's face. Not scared anymore. Angry, cornered. That night, I got a call from my alarm company. Motion detected at my house. I pulled up the security feed on my phone. Trent in my driveway, staring at my windows. I called the police, gave them my address, described the situation. Restraining order violation. I'd filed one after the courtroom outburst. 2 patrol cars arrived within 10 minutes. I watched on my phone as they approached Trent, talked to him, checked his ID. He left without incident. But the message was clear. He wasn't done fighting. Neither was I. I checked my locks, set all the alarms, and went to my garage. My Chevrolet gleamed under the lights. Fully restored now. Perfect paint, perfect chrome, engine purring like a dream. I'd taken something broken and made it whole again. Now I just had to finish dealing with the rust. I texted Robert. He showed up at my house tonight. Police came. Escalate the wage garnishment. I want payments starting the day he finds new work. His response, already on it. And Harold, watch your back. He's unraveling. I looked at my phone at the security footage of Trent standing in my driveway, fists clenched. Yeah, he was unraveling, but I'd planned for that too. I pulled out the recordings from my hidden digital recorders. Hours of Trent and Heather talking, planning, scheming. Insurance against whatever came next. The game wasn't over, but I was still 3 moves ahead. August came with a decision I'd been planning since March. I sat in Robert's office, signing the final paperwork for the house sale. The buyer, Austin Youth Development Center, a nonprofit that worked with at-risk teenagers. They'd convert 1847 Cedar Ridge Drive into a community center. Tutoring, mentoring, life skills training. Sale price, $465,000, below market value, but that was intentional. The tax deduction alone would be worth it, and the symbolism was perfect. They're thrilled, Robert said, reviewing the contract. This location is perfect for their programs. You're doing a good thing here, Harold. I'm doing the right thing. There's a difference. I signed the last page. My house, the place where I'd raised Heather, where my wife had died, where I'd been humiliated at Christmas dinner, was no longer mine. It felt like shedding old skin. I'd already found a new apartment. Modern complex near downtown, 15th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lady Bird Lake. 2 bedrooms, open concept, parking garage for the Chevrolet. Rent $2,000 a month, which I could easily afford. The movers came on August 15th. I didn't take much. Furniture I actually liked. My tools, personal items. The rest I donated. The house had too many memories, too much weight. I spent my last night there in the garage with my Chevrolet. The car was finished now. Cherry red, paint gleaming, chrome perfect, leather interior restored to original condition. I'd rebuilt the engine myself, tuned it until it purred. This car had been my therapy, my meditation, proof that broken things could be made beautiful again. I ran my hand along the hood one last time in that garage, then drove it to my new place. Started fresh. 3 days later, my phone rang. Heather, Dad, can we talk in person? Something in her voice was different. Broken. Real. Where? Your new place. I need to see you. I gave her the address. She arrived an hour later. I barely recognized her. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by the HEB uniform, red polo, khaki pants. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No muck-up. She looked exhausted. She looked 35 going on 50. She looked for the first time in years like my daughter. Come. She stood in my living room, looking around at the minimal furniture, at the view, at the life I'd built without them. You sold the house, she said. Not a question. Yes, to a nonprofit. Your house, she corrected. No, Heather, that was my house. You just live there. She nodded, tears starting. I know that now. She sat on my couch, and for the first time in months, really cried. Not manipulative tears, not performance, just raw, honest grief. I'm so sorry, Dad. For everything. For letting Trent, for not standing up for you, for being part of it. I was so stupid. I sat across from her, waited. I thought we deserved it. Your money, the house, like you owed us because you were our family. Trent kept saying you had more than you needed, that you'd want to help us, that it wasn't really stealing because it would all be ours someday anyway. And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. It was easier than admitting what we were doing, than admitting what he was. She looked at me, eyes red. I read the text messages about helping nature along. I confronted him, and he said it was just talk, just frustration. But Dad, I think he meant it. I think he would have. She couldn't finish. I know, I said quietly. I left him 2 weeks ago. I'm staying with a friend from work. I filed for divorce yesterday. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly. Not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. Good. I know it doesn't fix anything. I know the debt is still there and the consequences and everything I did. But I need you to know I'm sorry. Really sorry. And I understand if you can't forgive me. I looked at my daughter, saw the little girl who used to help me in the garage, saw the woman who'd made terrible choices, saw someone who might finally be learning. I forgive you, Heather. Her breath caught. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You chose Trent. You chose to lie, to steal, to stand by while he mocked me. Those choices have results. The debt stands. The trust stands. The house is sold. That doesn't change. I know. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it and learn from it. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm learning. I'm working, paying my own bills. It's hard, but it's real. For the first time in years, I'm not depending on someone else. Good. Keep doing that. She stood to leave, hesitated at the door. Dad, do you think someday we could have a relationship again? Not like before, but something. I thought about it. Honestly thought. Maybe. If you keep making different choices. If you prove you've changed. But that takes time, Heather. A lot of time. I understand. She smiled, small and sad. I love you, Dad. I love you too. But love and trust are different things. You'll have to earn the second one back. She left. I stood at my window, watching the sunset over Austin, feeling lighter than I had in months. I'd lost a daughter for a while. Maybe I'd get her back someday. Maybe not. But either way, I'd found myself again, and that was enough. October 12th, 2025. Final hearing for debt collection. I arrived at the courthouse early, Robert beside me. We'd been through this building so many times, it felt routine. But this was different. This was the end. Trent and Heather arrived separately. Heather with a divorce lawyer, Trent with Miller, who looked miserable. They sat on opposite sides. Heather caught my eye, gave a small nod. Trent stared ahead, jaw tight. Judge Martinez presided. Same judge from the contempt hearing. She remembered Trent. Mr. Clark, present your case. Robert stood. Settlement agreement signed in February. Total debt, $49,200. Payments made, $4,250. Balance, $44,950. Minus $6,600 garnished from Heather's wages. Current balance due from Trent Stewart, $38,350. Your Honor, Mr. Stewart has been unemployed since May, but made no effort to find work. He's driven a 2023 Lexus valued at $31,000. We request the court order it seized and sold to satisfy the debt. Miller stood. Your Honor, Mr. Stewart needs that vehicle. He's had 5 months to find employment, Robert said. Public transportation in Austin is adequate. Judge Martinez looked at Trent. Mr. Stewart, have you actively sought employment? Trent stood. I've been dealing with personal issues. The divorce, the stress. That's not an answer. Have you submitted? Silence. Mr. Stewart. A few. Maybe 10 or 12. In 5 months, flat voice. Motion granted. The Lexus will be seized and sold. Proceeds toward the debt. Remaining balance subject to ongoing garnishment. Mr. Stewart will find employment within 30 days or face contempt. Trent's face went white. You can't. I can. And I have. Next case. We filed out. Trent was shaking. I walked past without a word, but Trent wasn't done. This is all your fault. He turned on me in the hallway. You destroyed my life. You took everything. I stopped, turned slowly. No, Trent. You destroyed your own life. I just stopped letting you destroy mine. You planned this. All of it. I planned it from the moment you called me a broke old man in my own home. His face contorted. $1 million. That's what you took from us. And that's when I smiled. Trent, let me tell you something. That document I tore up on Christmas Eve, the $1 million trust. He went very still. That was only part of my estate. In January, I created a new trust. The Lombard Automotive Education Fund. Total value, $2.3 million. I watched the color drain from his face, watched his eyes go wide, watched his mouth work soundlessly. $1.8 million from my business, $465,000 from the house sale, $220,000 in investments. Everything I built over 45 years. You gave it all away. Every penny. To scholarships for young mechanics, 15 students a year, $25,000 each. Kids who actually want to work to build something, people who deserve it. Trent's knees buckled. Miller caught him. That money was supposed to be ours, Trent whispered. You were supposed to show me respect. Instead, you call me broke and pathetic while planning my death. So yeah, that money could have been yours. Every single dollar. I stepped closer. But you chose to mock me. You chose to steal from me. You chose to discuss helping nature along. And now, that $2.3 million will help people who'll never know your name. Who'll never know what you could have had if you'd just been decent. His face had gone gray, the same color as Christmas night. 10 months of planning, and it all came back to this moment. Full circle. You're going to die alone, Trent said, voice breaking. A bitter old man. Wrong. My legacy is 15 mechanics a year learning their trade. That's more family than you ever were. I turned to leave. Errol, Heather's voice. She stood nearby, divorce papers under her arm. Thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. For forgiving me even though I don't deserve it. You're welcome. Now go build a real life. She nodded, walked away. Different direction from Trent. Robert and I left the courthouse. October air was crisp, clear. How do you feel? Robert asked. Satisfied. Complete. Ready to move on. What's next? I'm thinking of volunteering. Maybe mentor some of those scholarship kids. Teach them about business, about integrity. He laughed. I think you'd be good at that. I drove home in my Chevrolet, engine rumbling smooth, paint gleaming red in afternoon sun. 10 months of restoration complete. My phone buzzed. Text from Cynthia Harris. First scholarship awarded yesterday. 18-year-old from Houston. Single mother working 2 jobs. Wants to learn diesel mechanics. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled. That evening, I took the Chevrolet out for a drive. Out of Austin into the hill country. Windows down, radio playing classic rock. The rebuilt engine purring perfectly. The sunset painted the sky red and gold. Beautiful, peaceful. I thought about Trent's face when I told him about the $2.3 million, the absolute devastation, the realization of everything he'd lost through his own choices. I thought about Heather starting over, learning, growing. I thought about 15 kids a year who'd get a chance because I decided revenge wasn't enough. Justice had to build something new. The road stretched ahead, empty and open. I pressed the accelerator. The Chevrolet responded like a dream. And I laughed. Free, victorious, whole. Justice hadn't just been served. It had been earned. Looking back on that Christmas dinner, I realize now that Trent's cruelty was a gift. It stripped away any remaining illusions I had about my daughter and her husband. It forced me to see clearly what I'd been avoiding for years, that the people I thought I was protecting were the ones I needed protection from. Revenge isn't always about hurting someone who hurt you. Sometimes it's about reclaiming your power, setting boundaries, and redirecting your resources toward those who deserve them. The Lombard Automotive Education Fund isn't just a charity. It's my legacy, a living testament to the values I've always held dear. Hard work, integrity, and passing knowledge to the next generation. As for Heather, time will tell if our relationship can be rebuilt. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and trust must be earned. But I'm open to the possibility, not because she deserves it, but because I deserve peace. And Trent? He's learning a hard lesson about consequences. When you build your life on someone else's foundation, you shouldn't be surprised when it crumbles. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and tell us in the comments. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed? And of course, subscribe for more stories like this. The next one is even more shocking, and you won't want to miss it. Until then, remember that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about restoration, both for yourself and for those who truly deserve your support.